Sourcing Industry Group, or SIG, is the premier global sourcing association and is widely known as a forum for providing thought leadership, networking, and training opportunities. SIG is unique as it provides these opportunities to a blend of executives and practitioners in sourcing, procurement, risk, and outsourcing, as well as the service providers and advisors who serve them. Founded in 1991, SIG has served these professionals from Fortune 500 and Global 1000 organizations and more, while opening dialogues with their counterparts in finance, HR, risk, and other business functions throughout its history. Sure, SIG has achieved a lot over that long history, and with it we have some great stats that we can boast about. But SIG is so much more than that, and what we are most proud of is the community we have created, the connections we have inspired, the knowledge we have shared, industry and organizational improvements we have been a catalyst to, and the careers we have transformed. SIG provides you with unrivaled networking opportunities with its global events program. These include summits, signature events, CPO and executive virtual series, and webinars. Summits occur twice a year and span multiple days. They consist of concurrent breakout sessions as well as workshops, keynotes, entertainment, networking, sponsor booths, and more. Once a year, our summit also includes the Future of Sourcing Awards program, which celebrates companies and individuals that are transforming, innovating, and leading the sourcing and outsourcing industry. Signature events are one-day programs. They take place virtually or in person regionally and are in essence a mini summit. They offer an executive roundtable, general session speakers, CPO presentations, analyst overviews, and 15-minute SIG talks, as well as a spectacular provider showcase. SIG's CPO and Executive Virtual Series program takes place at various times throughout the year. It is a 2-hour Zoom meeting format for a group of no more than 30 executives, allowing open dialogue for sharing current issues keeping them up at night, as well as current trends, thought leadership, and best practices. SIG webinars are hosted frequently, often twice per week, and can be either thought leadership and educational in nature, or a solution deep dive which showcases the latest and greatest of our providers' offerings. With a high ratio of buy-side to sell-side and decision-making titles, SIG events are collegial, memorable, and senior level. It is the best place to network with your peers while sharing and learning emerging best practices. Our global events program is ever evolving, but it simply wouldn't be possible without our sponsors or attendees like you. Please check the SIG website frequently for upcoming dates, current agendas, as well as sponsorship opportunities. Another great resource is SIG's Career Network, which features job postings for professionals in all levels of employment. Whether you are looking for a job or you're looking to hire your next superstar, the Career Network has many of the current openings from our membership, as well as from other incredible organizations outside of the SIG community. Another one of SIG's core elements is that of thought leadership. Our members are at the forefront of the industry and are driving innovation in all aspects of sourcing, procurement, and third-party risk. SIG enables our members to leverage this brain trust to keep pace in the rapidly changing world. This intel is available across all of SIG's offerings, but most notably on our website in a variety of ways. The SIG Resource Center, or SRC, is a comprehensive treasure trove developed by and for professionals in sourcing, procurement, outsourcing, risk, and more. It is home to a plethora of tools, templates, white papers, presentations, and research documents that will make your job easier every day. SIG's peer-to-peer program is an opportunity to pose top-of-mind questions to the greater SIG community on issues they might be encountering at their organization. These are accessible in the SIG web portal and emailed to community members up to twice weekly. It's the best way to gather best practices on individual needs and learn from those who have faced the same challenges. To hear more from industry thought leaders, you can also get connected with SIG in some other ways. The SIG Speaks blog will keep you up to date with what's happening in the industry. The Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast features bite-sized interviews with big names in sourcing and procurement. And SIG's flagship digital publication, Future of Sourcing, publishes articles on industry executives spearheading procurement transformations. Another central element of SIG is training. SIG is the parent organization for SIG University, which was founded on the ideals of elevating sourcing and risk professionals to deliver strategic value to their organizations and transform their careers. It was created at the request of SIG members who saw an educational training gap for today's workforce, and offers one-of-a-kind certification and training programs for professionals seeking deep expertise in sourcing, governance, risk, intelligent automation, and more for themselves and for their teams. We perfected e-learning for adults before it was necessary. Our proven model for adult learners provides a flexible environment with online lessons, quizzes, and discussion forums moderated by expert faculty. Programs are offered in several different delivery models depending on you or your organization's need. Open cohort semesters start on average every 1.5 months, while closed cohorts for teams of 20 or more can start at any time. In addition, we also have self-paced or fast-track options. But wait, there's more! In addition to all these great things, SIG also partners with some amazing companies to bring you more exciting offerings. Everest Group has partnered with us to provide SIG members with insights and analysis to help them capture greater value from their contracts and provider relationships. We've also teamed up with PeopleTicker, a solution that will help you leverage market data to show savings and retention opportunities. We've also partnered with Spend Matters to offer discounted access to tailored solution map benchmarking-based tech selection services such as Accelerator Insider and Spend Matters Pro. Finally, we've also partnered with Engage to offer a practical approach to transforming and fast-tracking maturity of an organization's third-party governance and risk management program, leveraging Engage's groundbreaking new AI-integrated third-party engagement platform. You can learn more about all of these offerings on the SIG website or by reaching out to one of our representatives. So make sure to take advantage of all that SIG has to offer for both members and non-members alike, because there really is something for everyone.
Now, why are you here today? Win-win negotiations? Bah humbug. So I love the title, and I love the presenters that are going to be here today. So let me spend a minute and just introduce you to our speakers. So with us today is Amanda Prochazka, and Amanda is the CEO of a company called HPP and the Chief Wonder Officer at Wonder Services. Some might say Amanda is a disruptor. Some might say that she loves to fix things. She's an expert in process improvement, supplier performance, and leading large-scale transformational programs for some of the world's best-known brands like Conagra Brands, Kellogg's, Kraft Heinz, and MGM Resorts International. She's been leading digital and strategic transformations over her 16-year career in procurement, being accountable for sourcing, analytics, process improvement, program implementations, mergers and acquisitions, and more. So she's currently serving as a Chief Executive Officer at HPP, which is an operational excellence firm who helps business leaders unlock revenue and cost reduction opportunities through process efficiencies and effective daily operations. She is also the Chief Wonder Officer at Wonder Services, an engagement advisory firm who helps business owners get their brands known and passionately follow through effective engagement marketing and branding. So welcome, Amanda. With her today is Mike O'Brien. He's the CEO and founder of Digital Revolution. Now, I've known Mike for a number of years. I met him when he was the global head of IT at BP and the Chief Procurement Officer at Aviva North America and at several other executive positions. He is an accomplished energy and financial services professional with entrepreneurial curiosity, strategic management, technical expertise, and commercial financial acumen, and he's had a global career. Very exciting to have Mike. He is such a renowned executive. He's had over 13 years career heading to head of infrastructure for the Americas at ABM AMRO. He holds a Bachelor's of Science in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Michigan, which I always love saying because that's my alma mater. And with us today is Amrita Joshi. She is the CMO at AppOrchids. She has global business experience in the technology industry, spanning a breadth of roles from CEO to CMO to globalization consultant. Amrita has held several permanent and interim CMO positions in companies that focus on next generation technology products. Now, she likes to specialize in things like big data, machine learning, automation, and cloud. She is currently the Chief Marketing Officer at AppOrchid, which is an enterprise AI platform and solutions company, and has been involved in launching the solution that you will see today around Contract AI when she does a demo. So welcome, Michael, and welcome, Amrita. I'm so glad to have both of you here. And with that, I am going to go off screen, and I'm going to hand it over to Amanda, and her and Michael are going to have a conversation. Then Amrita is going to come back and give you a wonderful demo. So in the meantime, folks, once again, make sure that you send in any questions that you have. If it's regarding something that's right on point right this second, I will ask it. Otherwise, we'll hold the questions to the end. And then this is being recorded. So tomorrow we'll send you a link to today's recorded presentation with the contact information for the people who are with us today. So hang tight, enjoy, put down your phones. Don't just keep yourself on this screen. This is where you want to be. All the magic is going to happen right here on your computer. So with that, I'm going to go off screen and take it away, Amanda and Michael.
All right. Thank you so much, Dawn. We are so happy to be here. And I just want to kick off by saying thank you to Dawn, SIG, and App Orchid for this opportunity to discuss win-win negotiations today with my co-partner in crime, Mike. So we thought that it would be great to, in lieu of a presentation, to have a robust conversation on the topic today. Now, most procurement professionals have heard of the concept win-win negotiations. And even some go as far as saying such things as there's no such thing as a win-win negotiation. But Mike, I believe that you have experienced success in the win-win negotiation process, particularly around terms and condition negotiations. So I cannot wait to learn more from you today. So let's start off with our first question. Mike, what do you believe creates a win-win negotiation with suppliers?
Well, I think the biggest thing I can tell folks is first to understand and know your business and what your business perceives as value. But I think the thing that we often forget about is we get a bit selfish and only looking at ourselves and what we want. But I think it's really important to understand the supplier, their business and what they value. More often than not, I think for years we've talked about our suppliers being our partners, but I think I go a little bit against the grain in saying, it's tough to be partners with somebody whose goals are diametrically opposed to yours. Right. So in a traditional situation, as a customer, I want the services or the product for as cheap as I can possibly get it with the highest SLAs and the highest quality. And a supplier, they're trying to grow their market share and their revenue and their profit, and they want to give you a good service, but they want to get the most amount of money for their service that you'll accept. So you've got to find that happy medium where both you and the supplier can be successful together. And I think understanding their business and what they value and how they make money, and understanding that you actually want your suppliers to make money helps you get into that situation where you can say, let's find something where it works for both parties. I've spent a lot of time, Dawn as well, watching my football team, the University of Michigan, not do so well this year. And if one team's doing great and one team's losing, well, it doesn't end up very well, right? Both parties aren't successful at the end of it. And I think what's important is you want your supplier to make money. You want your supplier to do well, because together, if you find that sweet spot where you're both winning, you'll both excel together. And I think that's what you look for. I think also, in win-win negotiations, it's the willingness to be fair. And many suppliers with a couple letter names could probably tell you that at the beginning of every negotiation, I said, my intention is to be fair in this process. And if at any time you think I'm not being fair, I want you to call me out on it, because these things are long-term relationships. Usually they're not a one-time situation. And to be successful, you want to build that rapport with your suppliers or whoever you're negotiating. Depending, this isn't just customer supplier; it can be anything throughout your life.
Yeah. So I don't know if I should mention that I'm an Ohio State fan. Maybe that's a bad example.
It's rough year for us. So I mean,
we might not have a win-win situation on our hands during this interview.
No, not.
Fair points, Michael. This is something that sets the foundation for how the relationship is going to work moving forward. That initial negotiation that you have with a supplier. And I was doing some research about this, and there's a concept called principled negotiation, which is a common win-win strategy. And it was actually developed by Roger Fisher and William Ury. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. It was new news to me. But they said that you can actually negotiate an agreement in a civil way, which I love how they put that. And there's actually 5 techniques, and a lot of them, Mike, you covered. One of them was separate people from the problem, which is always a great way to look at things in general in life. Focus on interests, not positions. Invent options for mutual gain, which is what you were just talking about, trying to find ways to find that mutual gain for both parties involved or all parties involved. Use objective criteria, and then know your banta, which I think we're all very trained in that. So the best alternative to negotiated agreement, we think about that an awful lot. So it was a great summary of what I think you were just saying about your experience in win-win negotiations. So let me turn a little bit, Mike, to why win-win negotiations are so important. So I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I think, like I was saying before, I think these relationships, when you take the time to enter into a contract, most of these things are a longer term relationship, and you don't want to start, you don't want to start that relationship with being overbearing or overreaching or using your leverage over the supplier. Either you're, where I come from, large enterprises, usually we have the leverage, and we could force a small supplier to do just about anything that we wanted to, but those don't tend to actually work out well, right? If the balance is off, the relationship is off, and then, in all honesty, if they're providing a service to you, the service is either of lower quality than you would like, or they'll find a way to get it back, right? So that you're just wasting a lot of energy actually not being fair and coming into what's reasonable. I think, often we talk about win-win, and everybody's probably having cracking open the bottle of champagne. But what I find is often kind of win-win is a little bit less enthusiastic, and a little bit more both sides have a little bit of frowny face, right? Both sides didn't win, but both sides didn't lose. So I think it's just how you look at it. But I find those agreements that stand the test of time, and where both parties really work together and can create something new and find ways to keep reinventing themselves and moving faster and keeping pace with innovation, really comes up with those agreements that are fair and balanced. And I think also the ability to talk through them and talk through issues and have that governance structure set up to be able to talk about the things that you didn't contract for, or when things change. I think that helps as well.
Yeah, it's all really about collaboration, right? Hearing the other side, understanding where they're coming from, understanding where we're coming from. And yes, you're absolutely correct that there's a give and take, that we've all lost on certain things and we've all won on certain things, but we've come to a consensus around what is the path moving forward for the relationship. So I find it interesting that McKinsey came out with a recent study called Taking Supplier Collaboration to the Next Level. And they found that organizations that focus and achieve supplier collaboration right out of the gate, all the way through the ongoing relationship, they see a swing of 10% in earnings before interest and taxes. So I find that just astonishing, that if you do this right out of the gate, it could mean a 10% swing for your company. And honestly, negotiation is the first step in building that collaborative supplier relationship. You're setting the foundation for where this relationship is going to go. But Mike, I think it's important to probably point out some things that are not win-win negotiations. So I think you mentioned a couple of these, but one person playing hardball that puts another person at a disadvantage is not typically a great way to build supplier collaboration. If the losing party needs to fulfill some part of the deal, but they only can do that in an uncooperative or an awkward way, is usually not a great way to move forward. And then using tricks and manipulation during the negotiation can really undermine trust. And really that's the essence of the foundation of collaboration. You can't collaborate effectively without that trust. So those are some of the things that don't look like win-win negotiations typically. So obviously supplier collaboration is important, and there's a lot of value that can be received there. But based off of your experience, what else can we, where else can we increase value through win-win contract negotiations?
Well, I think that's probably a good lead into, the problem that we saw. Maybe I can talk a little bit about the problem that I saw. And one of the benefits of sitting in like an open plan area when I was at BP is actually you can hear what everybody's working on. And, I wasn't like hovering over everybody, but you kind of hear what everybody's working on. And what was interesting to me was, my background is used to do those large outsourcing and advisory agreements, where 1,500, 2,000 pages. And we could do a deal between, 4 6 months, a massive deal like that. But what I saw from my team is that they were spending equal amount of time on like a 50, 60 page agreement, negotiating terms and conditions over and over. And I could just hear the same conversation, around me with the same supplier talking about limitations, liability, insurance, and going back and back over months. And it was taking us 3 to 6 months to get to contract. So one of the things we just thought that we need to actually kind of fix this, and what's the way that we can actually address this problem, because at some point in time we've all been lulled into this false sense that every contract with a supplier needs to be a bespoke or custom contract. And when you think about it, it's madness, right? Like at BP, I had 1,400 suppliers, so I needed to renegotiate limitations of liability, insurance, force majeure 1,400 times. I don't think so. So what we did was we partnered with App Orchid, and we wanted to see what could we do with technology, and could we actually solve this problem using technology. And what was interesting there was, I think we knew where we wanted to be on a lot of those areas, and everybody had our templates and our toolkit, but we had no idea what we were actually signing up for every day. So everybody has their template, their go-in position. But, to be honest, we didn't, and I think it's probably the same for most companies. Once the contract is signed, nobody really knows actually what was conceded, what was won in those contracts. So in order to build something that we could actually have, an AI product negotiate for us, we had to know, what did we actually sign up for? Right. And that's where we started building and doing contract analytics with App Orchid, and kind of finding out what did we actually sign up for. And then there was a huge gap between, the folks that in tax and insurance and legal as to, this is what's contained in all our contracts, and actually what, when we pulled in and interrogated all our contracts, what did we actually end up? And there was a massive gap between what we thought we had signed up for and what we actually had. But what we also saw was a lot of these things actually converged, right? So our starting point, in a lot of situations was way overreach and net market, and nobody would sign up for it. And what we ended up discovering was that a lot of these things kind of converged. And we came to the realization that so much time was being spent that didn't add any value, right? And in my career, I had, how often I personally have not taken a supplier to court. That might be different for other folks, but how much of the procurement life cycle is spent on an area that, doesn't generate, it's important to have those things there, absolutely. But to focus, 80% of your time on something that, I'm getting older now. In my career, that I've never exercised. Whereas folks are spending like about 20% of the time working on statements of work, milestones, deliverables, acceptance criteria. That's the bulk of my life, right? Dealing with those disputes. But we were spending an inordinate amount of time on terms and conditions, very little actually on what I think is kind of the sweet spot, or where we actually generate value as procurement organization. So that's kind of like a little bit of the background
Right.
of what we looked at. And the product that we created with App Orchid actually, took something from 3 to 6 months down to 1 to 7 days. We still had to do the negotiate statements of work and all those important things, but I mean, basically took about 80% of the effort out of the contracting life cycle, and allowed us to focus on the things that add value to the company, but also allowed us to standardize and have a good view of actually what we were signing up for and understand the risks that we have out there, rather than everything locked up in the cabinet and not useful. So you'll see a little bit more when Amrita kind of shows the demo of that, but that's really kind of the cusp of what technology can do, and how, when we talk about win-win, not that it's great for me to be take 3 to 6 months out of contracting and get that down to a week. That's fantastic for me, but it's also fantastic for the supplier.
Yes.
For us to go out there and actually find out, not have this huge overreaching cases that we spend months and months and months saber rattling over limitation of liability insurance, actually going out with the clauses that we actually would actually sign up for, and that are win-win, and just allowing them to work through that and actually being more fair and like, let's cut to the chase. But what we also did was we eliminated that whole redlining process out of terms and conditions by being able to go with what's fair and reasonable, rather than back and forth of redlining. I see your red line and I raise your red line, and we go back and forth until usually that goes on until someone says enough, we need this agreement, and then people start to concede and get reasonable. And then we just took all of that out and get to actually what adds value.
Yeah. So I will say, Mike, that I am just slightly jealous of what you were able to. No, I'm actually a lot jealous. I'm thinking of my life as someone sitting in the chair trying to negotiate those contracts back and forth. And man, it would have been so great to have a solution like this to really shift your focus on where you're going to drive value. So you were not only able to achieve that for your own team, but it helps the supplier relationships right out of the gate with that transparency and honesty and that straightforward approach. But you also added value to your stakeholders, because now you are streamlining the process, you're turning things more effectively, and you're focusing where you can add value for them. So job well done. I am just, I wish I would have had it when I was sitting in the seat myself. So now you went into a little bit of this, Mike, but I would love for you to go into a little bit more detail about how did you create win-win negotiations through Contract AI?
Well, I think that the important thing was to understand what are we actually signing up for at the end of the day, knowing what are the options that we have to offer a supplier that we're willing to negotiate with them on, instead of jumping out. I want the earth, moon, and sun from the supplier, and we want you to do it for free.
Right.
I mean, it's great to have these great positions and get in there, but actually being fair and reasonable. So I think go back to my philosophy is, it's a long-term agreement. You want somebody there that you're fair and reasonable with, that both sides can trust each other. That's where the value is. But I think this, what we stumbled upon is, the kind of, I'll just say it's simple, right? It's the Pac-Man of procurement. It's because it's so simple. I think, when you say why would we do this for every customer and every supplier, it just makes sense. It's win-win on so many different situations, and that one, you increase the speed for both the customer and the supplier. Mm-hmm. You reduce the cost of actually getting into a contract. Doing these responding to RFPs and going on these pursuits is expensive for both the customer and the supplier. So by taking the legal and the procurement areas and making them much more efficient, that makes both sides actually, far more efficient. Let's maybe put some of that money, that pursuit cost, actually into the product instead of negotiating something that's been done thousands and thousands of times again.
Right.
So I mean, that's something that's kind of win-win on both sides. And I think the psychology of the suppliers, kind of what we get back is, we would typically have marked that up, but knowing that I can just go and accept that and we can get the contract tomorrow, we're gonna go and do that. So I think what we're saying is just a change of what you can do to actually be fair and reasonable, but also what technology can actually do and actually fix kind of some of these real world issues. Many procurement folks might have an issue with, oh, you're taking away my redlining. I love that process of going back and forth and doing the negotiating limitations of liability. That's my favorite part. I know some people do enjoy that, but I think you have to look at where is the value created for the shareholder. I think in both companies, and I think we're about creating value, not about necessarily following the process. And I kind of urge everyone to not necessarily blindly follow processes, because that's the way we've been doing for so many times. Actually look at where like emerging technology can actually change something, and just in a small way that will have large impacts. And I think that's what we've found here, is just by changing the way that we do something in a small way and doing it in a more informed way, we add value to both the customer and supplier.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually found, as I was researching some of this topic around win negotiations, this is a really great example of where technology actually enhances the behavior of how you are relating to another third party. So if I think about your example, Mike, there's actually 7 principles of undertaking a win-win negotiation. And I think you ticked every single box with your example. But the first one is trust. The second one is listening to each party, which is great. And you do that kind of through the different options that you'll see here in the demo. To be transparent, to be nice, which is something we probably don't talk enough about in procurement, to be fair, to be faithful, and to commit to a win-win outcome. And those are the 7 principles that I think you actually focused on through this technology deployment, and how you were able to approach these contract, the terms and conditions negotiations. So I think that probably people are pretty excited to actually see what you're talking about, Mike. So I think I'm going to hand it over to Amrita, and so that everyone here attending today can actually see the solution that you are referencing. So why don't we go ahead and take a quick look at it?
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Amrita, it's all yours.
I am here. Thank you. Give me a sec. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Amanda and Mike. And Mike's going to help me a little bit go through this so we can give some good real life examples. So thanks, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and show you the Contract AI demo, and we're going to focus really on that negotiation piece. So Contract AI is a SaaS-based application. And it helps streamline the negotiations piece and actually really transforms it, as Mike said, in terms of eliminating the redlining process. But it also, because we are using AI, has a very strong analytics backbone. But we will show you the piece of the flow that really helps with that negotiation and streamlining that process. So the first piece that I have up here is the Analyzer app, and we have just uploaded about 10 contracts in here, which are the demo. Give me a second. So I'm going to show you that the first step, as Mike talked about, was we have to really look at what you signed before to see what you would consider as a buyer win-win clauses, right? So you might have started out with one template, but after it's been redlined by somebody, then you can actually see where did you actually end up in that clause. And that's the information we're seeking when we are extracting information. So if we look at these details, and this is exactly how the extraction process works. You select a template, and then the system is actually extracting all the clauses, all of the main clauses, subclauses, definitions from that particular contract. And in order to save time, I didn't do it, but this takes about 60 to 90 seconds per PDF, and you can also do this in a bulk upload as well. So if you go in, you can kind of just check your details of that extraction. So besides extracting all of the contract language, we actually also extract key metadata that can be used for analytics. So you can define this any way you want. Here we've pulled out the insurance amounts, and most of our clients will actually pull like 40 or 50 fields, so they can do some really in-depth analysis. So if we click out of here in this extraction screen, I'll go ahead and show you just a couple of the things in terms of the review. So let me come over.
So I'm going to show you, this is the changes over. So what we did before this is we just extracted all the data out from your contracts. And what we do is we extract all of the data as well as key metadata so that can be used in analytics. So right now, if you look at this, this is actually showing you what was changed in comparison to your boilerplate template, right? So if we look up here, you can see additions, deletions, and subtractions that were made to your contracts compared to your template. And down here, you can see what's very useful. You can see most modified contracts, of course, most modified clauses, and you can actually drill. This is actually the most important part to show you how can you make your template more efficient or give your suppliers more options to make your process more efficient. So you can see that the most modified clause here is the insurance clause, liability, billing and payment terms. These are things that you would expect, and you can actually drill down and see what changes that suppliers are actually making to that. Okay, so you can actually go ahead and see those, but I'm going to take you in the essence of time to our some of the improvements from some of the insides by looking at their prior clauses. Okay. Oops, sorry. Let me get out of here. And now I'm running really slowly. So we're definitely having problems. Sorry about that, guys.
Rita, if you turn off your video, you'll get a slightly better bandwidth, and that way we can at least hear you go through the demo.
Okay. Sounds great. I will try that. That's usually not a dashboard. And what you can see, Mike, why don't I let you go ahead and walk everybody through this.
So this is kind of an interesting way of kind of presenting some of the information that we were able to pull out, was that we were able to look at what, insurance was an interesting one where, we talked to the folks from insurance and they said, we always get XYZ million per contract. And we knew based on the contracts we had done that we had never actually achieved that, but the insurance department was saying, all of our contracts are there. But what we ended up seeing was actually there was no correlation between spend and the insurance amounts, but they were all being approved by our insurance team and a procurement team. So what we were able to do was then kind of show them that actually, you're kind of all over the place on insurance. We need to actually figure out what our real position is, because our go-in position, you've never achieved, but you're actually, signing an exception process every time you go through this, and that's inefficient. So let's just get reasonable as to what are we willing to accept. And by being able to pull the past historical information, we were able to see what was actually acceptable to us and have a much more informed discussion.
Great, thank you. And I'm just going to show you one more thing in terms of, so you can do the same thing, for example, we looked at payment terms. So what's actually in your contract compared to what your actual payment what your payment terms are in your other systems, or what your actual days to payment are. So those, you can kind of look at some of those things as well. So there's all kinds of different reports based on the metadata that you have that you can kind of drill into to see where you should look at improving your templates or your language or your options. So what I want to do now is kind of go into showing you how do you use that information to actually make your process more efficient, right? So we're going to go into the template creation portion of this. And, you know, this is how you would see your template. Okay, so first you see all of the main clauses on the left side, or your table of contents. And then you would see the language in your boilerplate on the right. So we're just going to go down here and just choose a couple clauses. Let me choose indemnification. So the system is telling you that it is, what they're going to do is recommend some options for you to give your suppliers, and that's where the AI comes in. So if you look at clause 9.2, it is in black, you know, straight black text. You can't really edit it or click on it. That means that Contract AI is telling you that not a lot of people are changing this clause, or if they are making changes to that clause, it's not meaningful enough for you to give your suppliers options. But if you look at the top one, it's got this kind of faint blue underline, and if we go ahead and click on it, you will see on the right side that the system will recommend to you different variances or options for you to give your suppliers. And these are actually grouped. So it's not giving you every single thing you've signed ever. It's actually grouping them together by similar meaning and telling you that you can consider these. So what you would do, and it's also going to give you an initial risk rating and an initial points value, which we'll talk about in a bit. But you can go through these. And so what the process would be, but procurement and then legal or together would go through the different variances. You could edit them. You know, you can actually edit these. You can change the risk rating and write a risk description, and the system will learn off of that next time. You can change the point value. The higher the points, the worse it is for you as the buyer. So the least points are less risk or less cost. And you can actually just take a look at, through this view very easily, how was this particular clause different from your template or boilerplate language? So once you go ahead and go through all of that, you will then go to, you can save your changes, and then this will be your new, so your template will have your boilerplate language as well as those options for the suppliers. So let me go ahead and show you how you create any deal. And I'm just being cognizant of my time here. So I'm going to show you just a couple of points on the buyer app. So this is where the procurement team will actually create a new deal. And what's nice about this is, you know how when you send a contract out, you then just sit and wait for it to come back from your supplier for that first big set of red lines. You don't really know what's going on. But here you can actually see that the supplier, this one is in process, that they have viewed 43% of the contract, and they've actually acknowledged about almost 20%, so 1/5 of the contract. This particular vendor has declined to participate, so you can see that. And this is an example of a deal that's already concluded. And so what I want to show you, I think we'll skip the new deal creation, but what I want to show you is what you end up getting back, which also actually saves you a lot of time. So let's say this deal is completed. 2 vendors have actually participated in this contract. And you can see here, this is what we call a deal summary. And you can see that Stark Industries, right, chose 67% options. And we have rated this as a high risk contract. And Wayne Enterprises has made 44% changes in terms of the contract, and we've rated it medium. And you can actually go in and see that, Stark used 75 of their 100 points allocated to them, and Wayne used 30, right? So if everything was equal, you would be choosing, of course, Wayne Enterprises. And what's also very useful, you know how when you get a contract back, somebody has to actually go through all those red lines and kind of either do some kind of scoring mechanism or use some judgment based on which contract is better to try to compare them. This is just really doing it automatically for you. And you can drill right down into the contract and see by this red dot, you know, this supplier chose this particular option that wasn't our template language, right? And you can actually see that they chose the third option, which cost them 10 points. So it's a very nice, so you're not only saving time on the negotiation side, but you're saving time on when that contract comes back, being able to actually evaluate those as well. Okay. So I am going to show you how the supplier views this. So if you just give me a second. So the supplier will just get an email, just like this, and they can just log in to the system. Okay. And they are able to actually add other reviewers as well. So we would send this, but here's what they see when they first log on.
We're not seeing the other screen, Amrita.
Not seeing the other screen? Okay, let me just try that again. Thank you. I'm going to stop share and I'm going to share again. Make sure that we're sharing the screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, can you see it now?
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. So they'll see a very quick tutorial that they can go through that just describes how to use the system. Okay. And once they're in, they're going to see a very similar dashboard to what you'd see on the buyer app. With all the deals that are going on with your company, and your company's logo would kind of be up here. So if we go into one that's in process, you'll see that they see very much a similar format as was seen in the buyer template. And they can just go in here and they choose, and this is indicating, if you see that shading around the number, it indicates that there are choices to be made or there are options that they can choose from. So they would again pick that blue area and the options would show up here. They would not see your risk ratings. All they will see is the different options and the different point values that are along, that are associated with those options. So an option we saw that has 10 points, so it's more benefit for them. Their points will actually go ahead. This piece will change and it'll actually deduct from their total points. That's how that works. And just to show you, it changed all the time, such as billing and payment terms. And it looks like it's going a little bit slow. We know that this is something changed all the time. So let's say you have a small vendor, right? And your preferred payment terms are 60 days, of course, with 0 interest rate. But this is an area that's very important to them because cash flow is super important. They would go ahead and choose a different option. Once they do, this turns red and you can see that the points deducted off of their total score. But this point system is a way to make sure that they're not just choosing what's beneficial to them, but they are constrained. So they are choosing what's really most important to them versus everything that, as opposed to the buyer's least preferred option.
Yeah, if I can interject here, Amrita.
Sure.
We chose a 100-point scale because I think everybody can understand a 100-point scale. And the way we've used it is we told suppliers, BP doesn't do deals with C and D players, so it's not like you have 100 points to use. And it's a way to evaluate whether the risk in the contract. So for the most part, you want to deal with A and B players. So if somebody wants to go and pick the highest risk option that you're allowing on every situation, it will show up in the score. But that we found success of just kind of telling the suppliers that we treat it like you were graded in school. So A, B, C, D, and E. So you look at it from that perspective, and I think that's been actually kind of powerful, and it's a good way to communicate, the risk and the changes to your suppliers.
Great, thank you, Mike. So just a couple other features I'll point out. The suppliers can actually chat and collaborate with one another through notes. And they can add other reviewers such as legal, et cetera, can be added and told which sections that they should actually review. And all of this, of course, is not visible to the buyers. And once they're all done, we do like them to acknowledge every section because we want to make sure that they've actually read it and they're committing. And once they go through the entire document, they would hit the finalize button and a little audit would come up to make sure that they've resolved all their notes so they don't have any point issues, et cetera. And this will take them, once that's done, this will take them straight to DocuSign, and they can commit to the contract. And so when you get that deal summary back that I showed earlier, they will have actually already signed this contract that they've committed to. So all that's left is that the buyer, once they choose their vendor, is to literally sign the contract and be done. So that's how it works. So with that, I'll go ahead and stop. And I think it's either Dawn or Destiny will be taking some questions.
So thank you for joining us back in. And Rita, I'm sorry we can't put you on screen, but I do have a question that came in regarding the technology. So the first request is, and I don't know, Michael, if you can answer it as well. Rita, let's see if we can hear you. Oh, you're there. Good.
Yeah, I'm here.
What happens if the agreement being reviewed is not your own template? How is the metadata discovered? And the reason I'm so interested is I'm going to be reviewing an acquisitions targets agreement. So that's a great one.
That's a great one. I'll take it. And then Mike, if you have anything to add. So what we're doing, and that is a great use case that we would love to explore. We know that that's one that could be very useful. So what we are doing is adding, and we've actually done this in different apps that has been built on the App Orchid platform. But what we are going to do is we'll just basically use the analyzer portion of the app where we will compare. So we do need something to compare to, but we can actually compare two contracts completely. So if you have there's an ideal, or we want to see the differences or something, we will set up some sort of a template that's then comparing those documents, or we can just compare two documents. And then you can see all of that information and flags like in the analytics piece. Yeah, and I'm happy to go more in depth into the analytics piece, but that's how you would handle supplier paper, just being able to see it against your own buyer, against your own template, and get kind of a red flag of, hey, here are the major differences, or this company's missing this clause entirely. And so you get that insight to make the negotiation faster.
Perfect. Mike, any follow-up on that, or Amanda?
I think what's important is, like, when we scan in the contracts, it's scanning, all the information, and not just pulling out, not just looking for certain things. So by extracting the contract, we're pulling all that data in, and so that we can use that then to compare to other contracts or other similar things using the technology. So I think that's a difference. It's just not going. You're not just going through the contract once and pulling out the things that you think you want. You're actually pulling it and extracting all the data out so you can use it and go back to it. If you find that some of that area is actually becomes more important. Let's say like force majeure clauses during COVID that you wouldn't have typically. You don't have to go back and rerun all of your contracts to go find that out. It's already done for you.
Perfect. So this is interesting. Do suppliers have to join a network? ? Also, does App Orchid integrate with full CLM, contract lifecycle management systems?
Yes. So, the first part of the question. So the integration part with full CLM, yes, we can work with any CLM system. We actually only require very minimal, which is just really getting the contracts and putting the contracts back in if that's your system of record. So it's a very minimal integration. Where what we like to do, or some people want to do afterwards, is doing a little bit more integration to pull some of the data that might not be in the contract itself. So for example, vendor's total spend, or some of these other items, so they can incorporate that in the analytics, but it's not required. It's something that we usually do after we do the initial implementation.
So then the first part was, do suppliers have to join a network?
Oh, no, we just, it's included when somebody purchases, the buyer purchases Contract AI, that's, number of licenses are included for that.
Ah, perfect. So what happens if the vendor wants more changes or changes that aren't in the option?
Mike and I might disagree on this one, so I'm going to let Mike go first. We have a lot of discussions on this.
I think there's a learning process, I think, for the suppliers as well, right? So, I mean, the first of all is everybody is trained that this is what we do now. We go back and forth, and if I don't find all my things that I like to mark up, then I don't like it. What I think it's first, if it's a little bit of education that, if I've gone through all my contracts and I know what I've signed up for and I'm offering those options, having that discussion with the supplier that says, these are the options. These are where, what we sign up for, and we've done the due diligence. Everybody else was able to accept these. Why weren't you? And is what you want to mark up, does that actually really add any value? And do you really want to delay this for months? Or do you want to go with what everybody else has already signed up with? That seems to be working fine. And I think taking that approach to it actually helps get a supplier back there. People will resist change. I mean, I'm not going to say that people aren't going to want to. They're going to want to say, how do I make this back to what I used to do? And I think you just have to help people along that way a little bit, and have that discussion with them that, we're not trying to, move things, backwards and make it the same as you used to do. It's like, you have to kind of reason, does this make sense? And, do you really want to open this or not have this contract? Do you really want to go negotiate for 3 months on this? Or possibly do you want to not even have a contract? So I think that's where you deal with. I don't think that you want to then open it up, because then people will just be using the tool to do the same thing we were always doing, as redlining. So I think that's the important thing, and that's the change that's important for both suppliers and customers to get on, if you're going to get to that win-win and actually focus on the things that are troublesome for both, and that's the statements of work and SLAs and deliverables.
So I would just say one thing from the product standpoint, that what we have done, and it's an exception versus the rule, and it's up to the buyer to do this, is you can expose a blank option for them to write it in. So if there's an escalation, and there will be the escalation, being able to escalate in the app itself, you can decide to do that. But as Mike said, it should be the exception and not the rule. So
just a yes, no from Amrita. Can the system extract more complicated contract terms, such as termination for convenience terms or pricing schedules?
Termination for convenience, yes. Pricing schedules right now we are handling through kind of just uploading them.
Perfect. Because we're out of time, I just wanted you to because I know this person's waiting to get that question in. But folks, we are at the top of the hour. We only asked you for an hour of your time. So if you have any questions, you'll have the contact information for our presenters sent to you tomorrow. Make sure you send them any additional questions that we didn't get to today, or anything else that occurs to you. And please keep the conversation going. And Amrita, thank you so much for bringing Mike and Amanda to us today. AppOrchid, by the way, folks, if you have not used AppOrchid, all I know is that our members are raving about them as a company. So all I can tell you is that their reputation is stellar. So make sure you reach out there and get to know their technology a little bit better. So with that, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you all for joining us. So you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you very soon.
Thanks, Don.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye.